on revenue, producing revenue from a placement standpoint.
Okay.
So from a business perspective, but yeah, we've definitely had quite a few different certifications and awards that we've gotten. Because we're the only team, I believe, that is dementia certified from Dr. Brian Brown, who's formerly from the Banner's Alzheimer's Institute. So that was really, really exciting news for us to be able to get that certification.
I think people can easily dismiss an award like that as just, based on the money, not about the care. But I would argue that if the revenues are there and you're one of the top producers, it's because of the care that you're providing. Otherwise, you wouldn't see the return and the repeat business, and people keep coming if you weren't providing that level of care in order to receive, that kind of revenue. So congratulations.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's how I think that the business has done so well and so quickly is honestly because of what you just said there. I'm not a placement agent. I'm an elder care advisor. So I just advise people on what makes sense based on whatever's going on in their situation. So if they can stay at home with a piece of equipment or a third-party service, which is like non-medical home care or hospice or home health or a combination of one or the other, and, services like Meals on Wheels and different things. I mean, let's be honest, who really wakes up and wants to go to assisted living? It's a very small percentage of people maybe that need that social, environment. But most people would rather be at home and be independent, and I can sympathize with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I help out and try and do my best to maintain that for anybody and everybody out there. So I just advise accordingly to what makes sense and what's right. It ends up, people call me more. So yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. That award really does attribute to the care that I'm providing here in the Valley, and I do a ton of different pro bono work for sure. I think I'm one of the few placement agents that helps out with all the state Medicaid cases, and those are non-income producing efforts, and I probably do about 20, all-techs is what we call it out here in Arizona Long-Term Care Services. I do about 20 of those a month. So it's
oh wow,
that's a lot of work for sure, and they can be very difficult ones too. Very acute care and people in situations where the monies haven't come through yet, and their application status has not been approved, and then they need to be placed immediately. They're being discharged from facilities. Quite difficult, and having to pull together resources, and definitely have, and in some very, sad cases, given some grant monies to be able to help out in the placement of some folks, that just were in a tough pickle and needed, the help. So I've definitely feel like I do my best to give back to the community. I started providing transportation for all of my clients as well, because I noticed a real big need for that. And once you start adding together all the expenses of, assisted living and talking about incontinence products and, all these other different things that they end up having to fork out, that transportation can be really a difficult situation.
I would imagine if you're a first time, needing help with the transfer of, with either with a wheelchair or with some specialized equipment, you can't just get in and out of an Uber. Where would you even start? I think that's a great service to provide to your customers, because before I got into the industry, I wouldn't know who to call. There's no like Uber, senior Uber service or something like that. So that's one more thing that you're taking care of for your customers.
It's a couple of other things I noticed a big, issue, and it's a pilot program that I've started here recently. It's with a doctors group, IPGS, and what it's going to be. The doctors group, the pilot program that I'm doing right now, what I noticed was people were having a lot of readmissions back to the hospital, because a lot of times they are still connected with just a primary care physician, and that is Monday through Friday, and they're not serving mobily, and they just really don't have a sense of urgency for a lot of acute issues that happen with our seniors, and they're probably somebody that's serving a large demographic of, folks maybe 19 to, 85. And so I think that once people start to have a lot of acute issues and start needing, the assisted living care, which is obviously when I took the picture here, that really we need to start talking about mobile services. And a lot of times that's hard for families to get all of these things done. Again, it's like really very overwhelming. So I brought on this transitional care group to be able to, a couple different things. One, when folks have chosen a place and they need to get the state compliant paperwork signed, often that can be really difficult with dealing with family practice physicians, and that can result in a hospitalization prior, to them ever getting to the assisted living facility. But secondly, what happens when people will discharge from like a hospital or skilled nursing, they'll end up, not having their oxygen delivered, or maybe they get there and they're having some severe anxiety and need some, PRN medications or what have you, and it can be very difficult. And then we have, again, readmissions back to hospitals, and that's never good for our seniors. I mean, it really takes away from them every single time they go back. And so I've compensating out of our profit margins to this, so we can be able to bring and service some of our seniors more and keep them out of the hospital as best as we can. And I think that's, again, something I'm doing a lot differently, trying to give back to our community, and it's huge.
That's a big service, because I know that a lot of times when people are transferred from home to a facility or from a rehab center, for instance, to a facility, as you mentioned, there's the issue of the transportation to and from. There's, what meds are coming, if any, are they coming? How soon can they get seen by the primary care doctor, either their own, like you said, if they're 9 to 5 and not mobile, then you have to find another primary care in order to get them back on the prescriptions they were on. Because a lot of times they don't always come with the prescriptions to a facility or even back to home. So that's another big service that you provide that really helps facilitate that. People may not even know that that's not common in the industry, and that it can be a big challenge, because if you're being transferred from home to a facility or from a rehab center back home or to a facility, then, if the meds don't come, it can take several days to get the prescriptions and to get the prescriptions filled and get them back and get the people back on the meds that they were on. And that is a trouble, at least with us, something we've noticed that is a big challenge. And I'm glad that you are helping assist your clients with that transition.
Thank you. Yeah. And something else that I think that really is made very unique and really helped with, I just think knowing what we're doing, honestly, is having the continued follow-up. We're able to keep our finger on the pulse in the industry because we have that continued follow-up with our clients. We'll go into a face-to-face visit within a week, and again at day 30, and then continue to call both not only the facility but the family, so that we can understand what's going on. And if we need to get back in there and advise, if the unfortunate situation happens where say a big company comes in and buys out and things change and management changes, or you have a huge turnover in care staff, or whatever the case may be. If we're talking about the smaller homes and they change hands, things can very much come awry, and we can hopefully come in there and come up with some correction plans first. And if that doesn't work, maybe we can look at seeking other placement options. Maybe it's again bringing in a piece of equipment or a third party service to be able to help out the situation. Whatever we can do to fix, and also, again, making sure that we know what's going on out there in the industry at all times. So as we're recommending, more placement options to new clients, we're still continuing to know what's going on, even behind closed doors, and not just what's being told from a sales perspective from any provider that's out there, but really knowing from our community partners as well as the families that are being served in the facilities that we're working with.
And that's really key, because, as you mentioned, with things within the facility can change, the staff, the ownership, and also as people age, their condition and their needs and their requirements change. And so that does need a constant supervision for placement agents who are just dropping off a client. Here you go, sign the paperwork, get paid, and then they're gone. If they're not following up, it may be a good placement initially, but after a few months, a year, it may not be ideal, because maybe the home can't provide the care they need, or like you said, maybe the management or something has changed where that client of yours or the resident isn't getting the care they need because of a number of situations. So I'm glad that there is follow-up there after placement.
Sure, and there's, I mean, a ton of different variables that can come into play. You know, it can be something that the care is still great, you know, everything, even the needs of that patient haven't changed, but maybe the patient population of the facility has. And it's become where maybe there's been a lot of deaths of the higher functioning folks that were a great social, you know, aspect of the placement originally, and now the residents that are still within the facility, you know, are more acute, and now we're talking about this, you know, higher functioning resident is now no longer really appropriate from a social perspective, and they're becoming depressed because of lack of the social environment. And, you know, so there's all kinds of different, you know, variables that can happen where we need to step in, and movement's always the worst, and so it's like the last thing that I try and do is replace somebody. I would rather, you know, like say in the event that we have a kind of a social lack, we could always, you know, set maybe up some third-party services, transporting to a senior center a couple times a week, or, you know, bringing even in some activity type, you know, maybe some volunteers from some, you know, churches and what have you. You know, LDS Church is always wonderful at providing, you know, some volunteers that would come out and help out with some of the seniors, and we're doing, you know, art and some crafts or playing, you know, some musical instruments or something like that, so that we can bring some life back into somebody.
Yeah. Now in that something like that, would that be working with the resident or with the owners or the managers of that residence in order to coordinate that extra activity?
It could be both. You know, like I've seen both. You know, where maybe maybe the home doesn't have the monies because of maybe they've had several deaths and they really don't have the income to pay for you know, other activities, and I get that. You know, I know paying attention to what it costs for homeowners out there, and maybe that is their only job, and so when they have a lack of residents, they have a lack of income coming in, and that can, you know, attribute sometimes to lack of activity. So maybe the family sponsors something. I've seen that happen before too, and again, just coordinating volunteer stuff. And I've never seen a home turn their nose up to having, activities brought in on a volunteer basis or on a paid basis. I mean, because it's more activity level for even if it's for one resident or you know, the whole group. So it's definitely, I'm always trying to suggest things like that rather than moving somebody because of a small issue. It's a lot better for a resident than to keep them in their environment and not have to go through that acclimation period. I mean, similar to hospital visits, there's a decline, I feel, every time we have to make a big change like that. And so if we can, whatever we can do to you know, stop that from happening, and that big change is absolutely always a better situation.
I suppose it's important for every resident to keep their surroundings and things the same, because change is pretty hard, and especially for memory care, dementia, or Alzheimer's patients, who it's really important to keep them stable in a location they can get used to and comfortable with.
Hands down, having that continuity of care and having the same, you know, care staff and you know, that's always, you know, the best route for everybody. Not necessarily what ends up happening all the time, but absolutely what I strive for when I'm placing folks, for sure.
Dustin, tell me, if you get a call from, say, a son or daughter of a woman who is in their late 80s, and they're concerned about her, she's living at home, and they're asking for your assistance, do you typically go to the home to meet with the family, meet with the I don't want to say resident, but the senior at this point, to kind of evaluate things?
Yeah, I do. You know, there's really no set protocol, I would say, because every situation is so unique. Whether it's I'm going and dealing directly with, you know, the senior themselves, because maybe they're completely alert and oriented and don't have family in town, and I've had to, you know, folks that have mobility issues, but, are still 100% have their faculties.